Welcome along to another Rugby Obsession deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating, a clash of rugby cultures, you could say. We're asking, how do places like New Zealand and France view their rugby differently? Specifically, the big test matches versus the local club scene.
Yeah, it's a fundamental difference, isn't it? How much weight is given to the national team versus the week in, week out club game.
Exactly. We've got a really interesting article as our main source called New Zealanders May Not Understand, but in France, Test Rugby is the B movie. Provocative title.
Definitely grabs your attention. And we've also got fan comments, stats, plenty to unpack.
Our goal today is to sort of understand why these views are so different and maybe appreciate the global game a bit more. And hey, if you enjoy these kinds of discussions, make sure you subscribe to Rugby Obsession. We do deep dives like this all the time.
So kicking off with France, that B movie idea from the source. It does seem quite striking, especially when you look at their recent series against New Zealand. Fabien Galthy, the French coach, well, he picked what many called a C-string team for that second test.
A C-string team against the All Blacks. That sounds brave. Or maybe something else. What was the thinking there?
Well, there are a couple of layers. First, there's this player welfare agreement between the French Federation, the FFR, and the league, the LNR. It was agreed back in September 2024.
Okay, so managing player load. That makes sense.
Exactly. And Galthy himself called it a tour of construction. Looking ahead to the 2027 World Cup, he used it to blood new guys like Adesagbe, Fisher, Tixaram, Guiar, see who might step up.
So an investment in the future, even at the potential cost of a test match result.
Pretty much. And the expectation is, honestly, a lot of those players probably won't wear the blue jersey again anytime soon. It really speaks to a wider attitude in France. The source mentions that many top 14 clubs and their fans, they kind of resent the November internationals.
Resent them. Why?
Injury risks, mainly.
Yeah.
Losing star players right when the club season is heating up. Plus, it breaks momentum. Like Racing 92 last season, their form just fell off a cliff after the November window.
Right. So while the Six Nations and the World Cup are huge.
Oh, absolutely. Massive interest then. But these other tests, November, the summer tours, they're seen as more for the real rugby diehards, the aficionados.
Yeah.
And in July, forget about it. Everyone's watching the Tour de France.
Okay, so if the tests are the B movie, what's the main feature in France? It has to be the clubs, right?
Oh, without a doubt. The
Yeah.
top 14 is the absolute main event, and the numbers, they just back it up completely. Think about this. Over 5 million people watched the Toulouse versus Bordeaux top 14 final. That's like a 28.5% TV audience share. Huge.
Wow, that's enormous.
And it's not just finals, the regular season.
Yeah.
Record 3 million spectators last season. Average attendance was over 16,000 per game. That's up 6%.
16,000 average. That's higher than many international games in some places.
It is. And some clubs are way higher. Bordeaux averages 30,000. Toulouse, 21,000. Toulon, Lyon. They're packing them in too.
And even the second division.
Yeah, Pro D2, also a record season. 1.4 million fans, averaging nearly 6,000. It shows where the real passion lies for so many French fans. It's tribal, it's local.
The article mentioned l'esprit de clocher, the spirit of the bell tower.
Exactly that. It's that deep connection to your town, your village, your club. Dan Carter experienced it. He said, French rugby thrives on emotion. Born supporting their club. They love, protect, cherish it.
That local identity piece is powerful.
And it fuels this incredibly intense competition. The top 14 is, well, it's relentlessly physical, probably the most lucrative league, too. Owners pour money in, and the fans expect, no demand, to see their stars playing for the club.
Right, which makes that tension with international call-ups even clearer. So let's pivot. How does this compare to the view down in New Zealand? Because the perception is very different, isn't it?
Oh, completely different. Night and day, almost. In New Zealand, Test rugby, the All Blacks, that's the be-all and end-all. It's woven into the national fabric.
It's more than just a team.
Much more. The source says they, like the Springboks, put their countries on the map. It's part of the national identity.
Yeah.
Which is why you get comments like Mils Milianas. He called France sending that weakened team, averaging just 9 caps, disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because for the All Blacks, you always tour with your best. Always.
But this intense focus on the All Blacks, does it have a downside for the domestic game, for Super Rugby?
Well, that's where the contrast gets really stark. Super Rugby has been facing challenges, big ones. The source quotes Stuff Media mentioning throwing a wheelbarrow load of water bombs towards the rows of empty seats.
That is quite an image.
Ouch.
Are the crowd numbers really that low?
Some figures cited are pretty concerning. Crusaders versus Reds, 11,700. Okay, not terrible, But Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica, only 6,000. Highlanders versus Moana Pacifica, 5,000.
That's worrying for major franchises. Australia, too.
Similar picture. Force averaging just over 5,000, Brumbies maybe 9,000 in those examples. It points to a struggle for consistent engagement outside the big national team moments.
And one reason often mentioned is the All Blacks taking sabbaticals, right? Often heading to Japan.
Exactly. You've had Rieko Iowan, Jordy Barrett, Sam Cane, Damian McKenzie, Bowden Barrett, Artie Savea, Mark Telea. Lots of top guys taking time away from Super Rugby. Tana Umaga was quoted saying, "Sabbaticals are part of the modern game. It's accepted, but it does impact the local product."
It's an interesting contrast, though. New Zealand players take sabbaticals, often playing elsewhere. French player management seems more about enforced rest because their league is so demanding.
That's a key point. The French approach is partly driven by the sheer physical toll of the top 14. We've seen awful injuries. Dupont, Olivon, Nidimac, Bay with ruptured ligaments, and sadly, retirements due to concussion, like Bernard Leroux and Paul Villemzy. It highlights the brutality and the need to manage players differently.
So two very different systems trying to balance player welfare, commercial interests, and international ambitions. And, it's easy to paint broad strokes, but lots of listeners rightly point out there's more nuance here. Things aren't always quite so black and white.
Absolutely. The comments we saw raised some really valid points that add important context.
Like the crowd size comparisons. Is it fair to directly compare attendances in, say, Toulouse or Bordeaux with Christchurch or Dunedin, given the population differences?
Right. Tasty made that exact point about population density. You can't conjure fans out of thin air if the city size is different. It's a fair challenge to direct comparisons.
And someone else, Mark, noted that while rugby isn't France's biggest participation sport, actually 10th, it's second for broadcasting money, which shows its commercial clout.
Yeah, and he also pointed out that other French national teams, like in basketball and football, often send weaker teams to qualifiers because club commitments come first, so it's maybe a broader French sporting culture thing, not just rugby.
Then again, Dorstedly Dan pushed back a bit, suggesting the 2025 Super Rugby average crowd might be closer to 13K, which isn't that far off some European games.
True, and he also said New Zealand fans have a right to feel annoyed when touring teams send B or C squads. You pay to see the best.
Fair point. And Alan P. wanted to clarify, it's not that France doesn't care about any international rugby. The Six Nations is massive. It's more the summer tours that are lower priority. He called it an ongoing tug of war between the league and the federation.
That tug of war feels like a good description. And finally, BH mentioned other factors hitting NZ crowds' high-ticket prices, those cold 7 p.m. kickoffs, and having games stuck behind a pay TV wall.
All really good points that show the complexity. It makes you think, doesn't it? What really stands out to you about these differences, and how do you see it affecting rugby worldwide? Let us know what you think. Drop us a comment or find us online. And please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe on Rugby Obsession to make sure you catch all our deep dives.
Yeah, definitely subscribe. Because thinking longer term, this core difference, New Zealand's identity tied to the All Blacks versus France's incredibly strong, wealthy club culture. Yeah. It really poses a big question, doesn't it? What does this divergence mean for the future health, the evolution of global rugby? Are these paths sustainable side by side? How will it shape the game on and off the field?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining us for this Rugby Obsession deep dive. We really look forward to you listening to our next episode.